The interface is disappearing. That's the headline. And yeah, things are a little bit more complicated than that. But we are entering a world where screens are beginning to fade into the background and some of the experiences that we use every day. But here's the challenge. These voice-first experiments or apps or products that we're using today, much less the ones we used a decade ago, they don't always work. And they've often left us frustrated because, they run headfirst into the very human trait of our own inconsistency. We don't always say things the same way twice. And that imperfection is tough for machines and even tougher for those who are creating these experiences to navigate. So the real question is, how do we create voice-first interfaces and experiences that actually work the way we do? I think it starts with a few key design principles. First, and this is a big one, speed and transparency. Voice first has to feel fast. That's the whole point. We're skipping steps here. We're using interface in a more natural way, so we want it to be faster. People also need consistency. And here's the thing, sometimes a system just needs a beat to process. But instead of leaving users hanging with just a ... designers really need to create systems that are more transparent and really show us what's happening under the hood. A little transparency goes a long way. And one example, ChatGPT in its advanced reasoning model will surface thought process and sources in real time. That's the sort of thing that really helps people understand that there's crunching happening. And also it adds a little bit of trust. That could also be audio cues, subtle chime, a tone. This language of thinking is a layer that I believe really needs to be added and in a sense really create that transparency that we often are lacking in these systems. Second, multimodal. And I've talked a lot about this. I'm going to keep talking about it because I think it's just absolutely critical for the future of experience. Voice is powerful. There's no question about it. But it's not enough on its own. We've seen this with Alexa, Siri, and car systems over the last decade. Without the right balance, voice feels thin and prone to error, and really good only for basic commands. What we need is a real interaction language. Imagine voice working alongside tone, haptics, visual in a clear, consistent way, guiding you on when to speak, when to wait, when to act. It's like having a conversation with somebody else. Once people start picking up on this grammar of tones and colors, pulses, moving between voice, screen, and touch will start to feel effortless. And this type of holistic interaction language will be a key in moving voice interfaces from those clunky back and forth moments to a more natural, almost ambient series of interactions. Finally, emotional fidelity. With screens, users don't expect much beyond function. But with voice, we do. We bring our own emotional expectations into these interactions, and most of the tools we've had over the past 15 years have missed that. They've sounded robotic or tone deaf when the moment called for empathy or even excitement. The next wave has to be different. Voice systems need to adapt their tone, light, upbeat when you've completed a task, steady and calm when you're frustrated, or curious when you're learning. They need to remember your patterns, your rhythms, even your unspoken preferences. That memory paired with emotional nuance is where real trust begins, but only if they can get it right. So what does this mean when we zoom out? The promise of voice-first design has always been there, but unlocking it has, let's be honest, taken decades. And tech isn't just the answer. It's an incredible enabler. But this is really about designing for the way humans actually communicate. And if we get it right in the process, we might just make these machines a bit more human too.